here who are doing the right thing. Now, there's another thing that I want to urge you to do, and this is extremely important also. We need to help homeowners pay for the upfront investments that these technologies require. Because financing is extremely important, and you know that, and some localities and some states have already done an excellent job in doing that, but we need national legislation in order to accomplish that. We need tax incentives, and we need financing instruments that build in the cost of the extra measures that are going to more than pay for themselves over a few years. But we should not put the burden on the homeowner or the business owner who's going to move into that building to put all the money in up front in order to pay for something that is going to be good for the country and is going to be coming back in the years ahead. That is why we need this legislation that is now pending in the United States Senate. One of the biggest provisions in this legislation has to do with green buildings and financing of green buildings. So it's very, very important that you all get active in doing this. Remember, the climate crisis, the economic crisis, the national security crisis, they're all linked by a common thread running through them. That common thread is our ridiculous and absurd over-dependence on carbon-based fuels. You grab a hold of that thread and pull it hard, all three of these crises begin to unravel, and you hold in your hand the answer, which is a shift to renewable energy, getting away from carbon-based fuels, emphasizing efficiency, building that smart grid, moving on with sustainable agriculture and sustainable forestry. We can solve this crisis. In the course of writing this book, over the last 3 years and researching it, I had more than 30 so-called solution summits with the leading experts in the world on every single one of these topics. And let me tell you the most important thing I learned. We have all the tools we need to solve 3 or 4 climate crises. We only need to solve one. We've got to get busy and get the laws and policies to do it. Yes, it is crucial to change the lights in the windows, but let me tell you, it's even more important to change the laws and the policies. And that means that we as citizens have to speak out. Every single day in this world, we're putting 90 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere. 25 million tons of it goes into the oceans, making them more acidic. The global warming pollution in the atmosphere is trapping the heat from the sun, melting the ice, creating a water crisis, threatening catastrophic sea level rise, creating shortages of water for drinking water and agriculture, especially in places that depend upon the seasonal melting of the ice and snow from the mountains, whether it's the high Sierras or the Rockies or the Alps or the Andes, or most significantly in the Himalayas, where 40% of all the people on this planet get more than half of their drinking water from that seasonal melting of ice and snow. And when that ice and snow melts, we've got a terrible problem on our hands. We're seeing deeper droughts, as the scientists have predicted. We're seeing stronger floods because there's more humidity in the air with warmer temperatures, and more of the precipitation falls at the same time. We're seeing tropical diseases moving northward into the temperate zones where we're not used to dealing with them. We're seeing stronger storms coming off the oceans. All of these effects of global warming have long been predicted. Scientific community has said the evidence is unequivocal. The National Academies of Science in every major country in the entire world have reaffirmed that finding, and they're practically shouting from the rooftops to say to the politicians and the leaders and elected officials around the world, you have to do something. Now, this is a challenge to our system of democracy, because we, all of us who feel this, have got to be prepared to get active and do something about it. Now, I realize that many of you have never been active in a political sense, and I'm not asking you to be active in a partisan way. I don't care what political party you're in. I told you I'm a recovering politician. I don't care what your ideology is. I don't even care if you're a skeptic about global warming. There may be a few of those. If you're a skeptic about global warming, help us protect our national security by getting off this addiction to foreign oil. Help us create these millions of new jobs. We need to all be in this together. We don't need to be arguing about this. This is good. Now, I'm wondering, there are a few young people here, and there are lots of others who have kids in high school or college. How many of you, I'd like to see a show of hands, how many of you have a child or a high school or a college student who in the last few years has made a decision to change their course of study, to change their major in order to get the skills and the knowledge that will equip them to be a part of the effort to solve this crisis? How many families here that way? Look at all those hands. Thank you. Thank you very much. Those young people are going to really move this country. But you know what? They're depending on us. I remember when I was 13 years old, I listened to the historic speech on television of President John F. Kennedy when he challenged this country to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely within 10 years. And I remember how many people said at that time that it was impossible to do that, and President Kennedy had made a mistake setting that 10-year deadline. But you know what? 8 months and 2 months later, Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. And they planted that American flag on the moon. And on that day, in Houston, Texas, at the NASA Mission Control, there was a great cheer that went up, and the average age of the systems engineers at Mission Control that day was 26, which means their average age when they heard that challenge was 18. So those of you who raised your hands, whether you yourself or a member of your family is now making a decision to be a part of this movement, you can do it. Don't ever doubt it. We as Americans have the capacity to do what we put our minds to. We have the ability to solve this crisis. You know we can do it. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We need to go far quickly, which means we got to get our act together. Some people have asked me, what about Copenhagen coming up? Well, I'm optimistic that we'll get a binding political agreement there. I heard somebody ask the other day about that Copenhagen meeting and said, what do you think? How do you feel about it? He said, I feel fine. That answer reminded me of something that I heard at the Grand Ole Opry years ago. There are probably not any country music fans here. I live in Nashville. Good. One Saturday night, 25 years ago, I was driving in my old congressional district, listening to the Grand Ole Opry on the television, and Cousin Minnie Pearl came on. She was the comedian with the hat, still had a price tag on it from Grinder's Switch. And she was a brilliant woman. Sarah Cannon was her real name, a lovely lady. But she told this story I want to share with you.